Listen, I've got like 15 ways to set it up, and I don't know what to do. So let me just go ahead and hand the ball to you and tell me what the last few days have been like for you, and if you know already what you're prone to do when the impeachment vote comes. First of all, it is tomorrow, correct?
So I haven't seen that official notification yet. I'm hearing it might be as soon as tomorrow. This just was dropped on us.
Okay.
Literally hours ago.
Okay. The whole thing's been dropped on all of us within the last. So tell me about your journey from when you first heard it to how it's and where you might be right now.
Yeah. Well, when I say recently, I'm talking a matter of hours ago was the first time I saw the articles of impeachment, and I think there's roughly 20 of them. I can tell you, from my experience, this came as a great surprise to me that this was something that had even, was being considered here by the Texas House. And as you started up, as in your lead in there, you were saying you're not sure if people are looking for, Ken Paxton's hide or looking to defend him. I'll be honest, Mark, I'm looking to do neither. I'm looking to do the best job I can to represent the 200,000 Texans that I'm honored to represent and cast the vote that I think most of my constituents would expect. And there's also a big question, let me back up here, and I'll start off by saying this. The allegations against Attorney General Paxton are very concerning. They just are. However, I am equally concerned, if not more concerned, with ensuring that the Texas House is not using the levers of power to potentially, or at least have the optics of looking like we're trying to criminalize political opposition. I know that's not something that my constituents want us to be doing. So there are things that are concerning that I think have been concerning for a long time. That's why we have a criminal justice system. From best I can tell, most, if not all, of these allegations have been being litigated or are current matters of litigation in the criminal justice system. We also have a court of public opinion. And right, wrong, or indifferent, Attorney General Ken Paxton was just reelected overwhelmingly in the Republican primary, and then by a majority of Texas voters just a matter of months ago. So it's hard to overstate the seriousness or the gravity of the situation that that is being placed before us, because whether we like it or not, a vote to impeach somebody because of the way the Constitution is written in the state of Texas, if the House votes to impeach, the trial would be in the Senate, but it would have the effect of overturning the will of millions of Texas voters who just put Ken Paxton in the Attorney General's office.
That so many layers of a wonderful answer. Let me unpeel them a little bit, because the language there at the very end, I believe, will be the language of those who vote not to impeach. I'm not looking for you to commit, right now, unless you want to, on how you will vote tomorrow or whatever day. But the notion of disenfranchisement. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I just said I have not yet decided how I'm going to vote.
Gotcha. The language of G. Is this a political weaponization of some of this stuff? A lot of it's been out already. And are we going to take away the will of the voters? Those are totally the index cards of those who are voting not to impeach. And those are great points. You made it, but another great point, a couple of minutes earlier, when you said that there's a lot to be concerned about here. The charges are concerning. The air of misdeed laid out in those articles is something you can't ignore. It is concerning, but so is the notion of trying to railroad and throw under the bus a guy for political purposes. Is it possible that there's something to both of those? Here's what I mean. Is it possible that there's some stuff in there that's just not good about Ken, but that it does not in any way rise to the level of dismissal from office? Will there be some people voting who say, look, I'm not saying that there's total Boy Scout stuff going on here or that it's totally clean, there's nothing to see here, but if there is something to see here, it's not the kind of stuff you throw somebody out for?
Oh, I absolutely think there could be truth on both sides. It absolutely could well be the case that he's done some rather egregious things that might warrant him not being the Attorney General of the state of Texas. It is absolutely plausible that that's the case. It is also absolutely plausible that the body, the Texas House of Representatives, that by the way, has had a really distorted sense of priorities for this session, if I'm going to be honest with you, in terms of not doing the basics, the core, the fundamentals of the job that the voters send us here to do in terms of passing major and needed conservative priorities. It is very possible that the process has been procedurally infirm. And by that, I mean, There's supposedly this thing started, at most 2 months ago, in secret, to examine, some kind of this $3 million settlement that is a legitimate issue for the legislature to be concerned about, as given the importance of us as fiduciaries of taxpayer money. But process matters, Mark, and optics matter, and perceptions matter. And if the Texas House is going to do something so consequential, there can't even be the whiff of this being a politically motivated issue. So both things can be true at the same time, Mark.
Well, if the bar is set where there's not even a whiff, it fails. Dade Phelan hates Ken Paxton's guts, and he has some company. That doesn't mean that every article is false, but that's a ton of what's driving this train, isn't it?
Well, that's right. And there was not a special impeachment committee that was stood up. I think we had one public hearing that lasted, a couple of hours when this was laid out on the floor of the House last night. And look, maybe this will change today. But myself and a handful of other Republicans got up on the microphone and directly asked the speaker some very basic, fundamental questions about what was being asked of us to do, about what information was going to be provided to the body, when that information was going to be provided to the body, how much time we would have between the information being given to the representatives and us being asked to push a red or a green button. And I'm sad to say, Mark, I'm profoundly disappointed that not one single question that we asked was answered.
We just had Chris Hilton on, who was with Ken Paxton's Office of Special Litigation, and he was just gobsmacked that nobody called him or called the AG's office at all to even appear before this committee. Should that have happened?
So I do think there are fundamental questions of fairness and due process here. And again, not putting my thumb on the scales on one side or the other, because both things matter. Texans should demand the highest standards of ethical behavior and propriety and adherence to laws. They have that right to expect that of their public officials. At the same time, if a public official is going to come under scrutiny or have criminal allegations thrown at them, we take very seriously. We must never compromise the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. And if the body is, and again, and this is not a talking point from one side or the other, it's just an objective statement of fact. If the body is going to contemplate overturning an election, that is something that should be taken with the utmost seriousness. Every I should be dotted, every T should be crossed, and the process must be impeccably done. And the process itself should be above impeachment. And there are fair questions that some of us have about the process that's undertaken. And there's no way to divorce this from other things that are happening nationally, Mark. I mean, this comes on the heels of the January 6th commission. It was, with all of its flaws and faults, and I think it was a kangaroo court, but it was held for months and months and hours and hours and hours of televised of hearings. And, we had a secret process, unbeknownst to most of the members of the body, for 2 months, one hearing, and then we were shocked with 20 articles of impeachment literally dropped on our desk, and we're told we're going to have to vote on it.
Yep, tomorrow.
Very short.
Do you believe there are 12 Republicans who will vote to impeach?
I don't really know how comfortable I am prognosticating on how my colleagues are going to vote. I think it's fair to say that there are a large number of my colleagues that do not hold the current Attorney General in very high regard.
Yeah, wouldn't have to be. It's 12 out of 86. Wouldn't have to be a lot. State Rep Brian Harrison is here, District 10. I think a lot of the bad blood traveling in both directions involves the settlement. That one of the things that happened is we didn't have Ken Paxton on trial because the four complaining attorneys said, hey, I'll take 3.3 mil. And Ken said, okay, great. Ken's opinion is, hey, cost of doing business. State ought to pay for that. Dade Phelan's feeling is, not so much, pony boy. This is your problem. Do you believe that the state should pay the $3.3 million settlement?
Well, as a fiduciary of our taxpayers, I have very real concerns about every expenditure, and every expenditure should be closely scrutinized. But, Mark, let me maybe take this issue up to a higher level, a more foundational level, and tell you some of my heartburn that I have right now. This is how, for the powers that be, have determined we're going to spend the last days or last week of this session.
Yep.
But I am concerned we're spending our time on this issue when we have not done the other things that we should have done this session, like, for example, protected medical freedom by banning COVID vaccine mandates. We have not passed school choice. We haven't banned DEI in college. We haven't done much on election integrity. We haven't secured the grid. We haven't reined in our governor's emergency executive powers. We've done nothing serious on deregulation. The communist Chinese can still buy our land in Texas. That's not going to change. And our budget that was just dropped on my desk also yesterday, coincidentally, as I read it, represents the biggest spending increase in the history of the state of Texas. So, Mark, when we're not doing the fundamentals of our job,
Yep.
I think that is the reason for some of the frustration you're hearing from me and some other conservatives down here. We haven't not passed one single serious border security bill, Mark. And this is how we're going to spend the final days of our session. That is a real source of frustration for me and other conservatives, not just in the legislature, but conservatives across the state.
Last thing, State Rep Brian Harrison with us. You set it up perfectly in the very beginning of your answer. You said that your job involves representing the people in your district of District 10. That is, and I think you phrased it. You wanted to assess and to discern what their will would be, what they want you to do. Every once in a while, when you're a state rep, when you get elected, there's a job you have, and that's to have your wisdom, your conscience guide you. And sometimes that will not reflect exactly what the majority will is. You don't put your moist finger to the air and just say, what does the district want for every single decision? So as you face your decision as early as tomorrow, you and I do both know, right, that your district does not want him impeached. You know that, right?
Well, I will put it this way. I have had the exact same number of my constituents ask me to impeach Ken Paxton as they have asked me to prioritize dealing with tampon taxes down there.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Well, I think the will of the district is, but here's the thing, and I've told this and we've talked about this a lot. Every once in a while, elected office means you'll have to go to when it's what we like you to do. If the district goes lib on you, that you may have to thwart their will every once in a while.
But Mark, to your point, that's exactly right. No two people agree on everything 100%. My wife and I, who I love dearly, don't agree on 100% of things. And they send us down here to do the job that they would do if they were in the seat, and trusting us to take all the information that we have as a member and using our best judgment, do the best job that we think would protect Texas and make us more free and more prosperous. And you're right. Sometimes that is an independent decision, not based on polling.
Gotcha. Listen, there, and I totally understand, by the way, because it's very sensitive, and a lot of folks are trying to figure out what they're going to do, as you admittedly are. But a whole lot of folks have said, hey, thanks, really don't want to be on the radio right now. You have, and we're totally grateful, as we are with everything you do. Brian Harrison, District 10, thank you very, very much.
Always great to talk to you, Mark. Have a great rest of your day.
That I will. We'll see how it all plays out. That is State Rep Brian Harrison, Brian E. Harrison on Twitter, District 10 in your program. 8:52.
6:60 a.m. The Answer.